The stagecoach rattled into Bandera, Texas, on a scorching afternoon in June of 1876, carrying a young woman whose trembling hands clutched a worn carpet bag, as if it were the only solid thing left in her world. Sarah Elizabeth had spent 3 weeks traveling from Philadelphia, each mile taking her further from the hell she had escaped and closer to an uncertain future with a man she knew only through 5 carefully worded letters. Her left eye still bore the faint yellow shadow of a bruise that makeup could not quite hide, and her ribs ached with each bump of the road. The other passengers had stopped trying to make conversation with her 2 days ago, put off by her startled responses, and the way she flinched whenever anyone moved too quickly. The driver called out their arrival, and Sarah's heart hammered against her breastbone. She had written to Nathan Everett through a matrimonial agency, responding to an advertisement that had seemed almost too good to be true. A rancher in his late 20s, he had written of needing a wife to help build a life in the Texas hill country. His letters had been kind, straightforward, never demanding. He had sent money for her passage without hesitation when she had accepted his proposal. He had no idea what he was getting. Sarah had not told him about Marcus, about the marriage that had turned into a nightmare, about the night she had finally fled with nothing but the clothes on her back and the few dollars she had hidden in her shoe. She had not told him that she was a widow only because Marcus had drunk himself into a rage and fallen down the stairs of their boarding house, breaking his neck. The police had looked at her with suspicion, but there had been witnesses to his drunken state, and eventually they had let her go. She had left Philadelphia the next day. Now, as the stagecoach rolled to a stop in front of a modest depot, Sarah pressed her hand to her stomach, trying to calm the nausea that threatened to overwhelm her. What if Nathan Everett was just like Marcus? What if she had traded one prison for another? But she had nowhere else to go, no money to return east, no family who would take her in. She was trapped by her own desperation. The driver opened the door and offered his hand. Sarah took it, stepping down into the bright Texas sunlight. The heat hit her like a physical force, so different from the humid warmth of Philadelphia. Everything here was bigger, wider, more open. The sky stretched overhead in an endless blue expanse that made her feel small and exposed. "Miss Elizabeth." A voice spoke from her left, and Sarah spun toward it, her hand flying up defensively before she could stop herself. The man who stood there froze, his own hands rising slowly, palms out. "Easy now," he said gently. "I did not mean to startle you. I am Nathan Everett." Sarah forced her hand down, her cheeks burning with embarrassment and shame. This was not the first impression she had wanted to make. She looked at the man who was to be her husband, taking in his appearance with quick, assessing glances that were born of hard experience. Nathan Everett stood perhaps 6 feet tall, with shoulders broadened by years of ranch work. His face was tanned and weathered, with lines around his eyes that spoke of long hours in the sun. Those eyes were a warm brown, currently filled with concern as they studied her face. He wore clean work clothes, simple but well-maintained, and a hat that had seen better days but was free of dust. His dark hair was neatly trimmed, and his jaw was freshly shaved. He looked nothing like Marcus, who had been pale and soft, with cruel blue eyes and hands that were quick to strike. "I apologize," Sarah managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "You surprised me. I can see that." Nathan's voice was careful, measured. He did not move closer, seeming to sense that she needed space. "I hope your journey was not too difficult. It was long." Sarah clutched her carpetbag tighter. "But I am here now." "That you are." Nathan gestured toward a wagon waiting nearby, pulled by 2 sturdy horses. "I thought we might go straight to the ranch if you are not too tired. It is about an hour's drive." Or if you would prefer, we could stay in town tonight, let you rest." The thought of being in a small room in a boarding house with this stranger made Sarah's skin crawl. At least at her ranch, there would be space, room to run if she needed to. "The ranch is fine," she said. Nathan nodded and moved to take her bag. Sarah jerked it back instinctively, then forced herself to release it. She had to stop acting like a cornered animal. Nathan gave no sign that her behavior struck him as odd, simply taking the bag and placing it gently in the back of the wagon. He offered his hand to help her up onto the seat, and Sarah took it briefly, climbing up as quickly as she could. The wagon seat was harder than the stagecoach, and her bruised ribs protested as they started moving. Sarah bit her lip to keep from making a sound, staring straight ahead at the road. Nathan drove with easy competence, his hands steady on the reins. For the first few minutes, they rode in silence. Sarah was intensely aware of his presence beside her, the way the wagon seat forced them to sit closer than she would have liked. But he made no move to touch her, keeping his attention on the road. "I know this must all be very strange for you," Nathan said finally. "Coming all this way to marry a man you have never met. I want you to know that I will do everything I can to make you comfortable. There is no rush for anything. We can take our time getting to know each other." Sarah glanced at him from the corner of her eye. He was looking straight ahead, giving her the privacy to observe him. "Your letters said you have a ranch," she ventured. "I do. About 500 acres, mostly cattle with some horses. I have a small house, nothing fancy, but it is solid. I built it myself 3 years ago when I bought the land." He paused. "I have a woman who comes in twice a week from town to help with the heavy cleaning and the laundry. Mrs. Garcia. She is kind. I think you will like her." "You do not need a wife to keep house then," Sarah said before she could stop herself. Nathan was quiet for a moment. "I suppose not, if that was all I wanted. But a house is not a home without someone to share it with. I have been alone out here for 3 years now, and it gets lonely. I thought it might be nice to have someone to talk to at the end of the day, someone to build a future with. And children." Sarah's voice was flat. Marcus had wanted children, had raged at her when none came, had blamed her and punished her for it. "If we are blessed with them, yes. But that is in God's hands, not ours." Nathan's tone was matter-of-fact, not demanding. Sarah said nothing, turning her attention back to the landscape rolling past. They were climbing into hills now, covered with scrubby oak trees and dotted with limestone outcroppings. It was so different from Pennsylvania, wild and untamed. In the distance, she could see cattle grazing, their hides brown and white against the golden grass. "It is beautiful," she said softly, surprised by the truth of it. "It is," Nathan agreed. "It is hard country, makes you work for everything you get. But it is honest. The land does not lie to you. Unlike people," Sarah thought. "Unlike men who courted you with sweet words and changed the moment the ring was on your finger." The sun was lowering toward the horizon when they finally turned off the main road onto a track that led through a grove of live oak trees. Beyond them, Sarah could see a house, modest but well built, constructed of weathered wood with a stone chimney at one end. There was a barn nearby, a corral with several horses, and various outbuildings that spoke of a working ranch. Nathan pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house and climbed down, coming around to offer Sarah his hand again. This time she took it more easily, letting him help her to the ground. Her legs were stiff from the long ride and she stumbled slightly. Nathan's hand went to her elbow to steady her, and Sarah jerked away so violently that she nearly fell. "I am sorry," she gasped, hating the fear in her own voice. "I am sorry, It is all right." Nathan's voice was calm, but Sarah could see the questions in his eyes. "Why do you not go inside and rest? I will bring in your bag and tend to the horses." Sarah nodded, grateful for the escape. She hurried to the door, which opened easily under her hand. The interior of the house was dim after the bright sunlight, and she paused to let her eyes adjust. The main room was larger than she had expected, with a stone fireplace, a solid table with 4 chairs, and a comfortable-looking armchair near the hearth. Through an open doorway, she could see a kitchen, surprisingly well equipped. Another door presumably led to the bedroom. The house was clean and orderly, with none of the chaos that had characterized her life with Marcus. There were books on a shelf near the fireplace, a rifle mounted above the mantel, and curtains at the windows that looked handmade but serviceable. It was a masculine space, but not unwelcoming. Sarah heard Nathan's boots on the porch and moved instinctively to put the table between herself and the door. He entered carrying her carpet bag and a bundle she recognized as provisions from town. "I picked up a few things," he said, setting the bundle on the table. "Fresh bread, some cheese, eggs. I thought you might be hungry." Sarah realized she had not eaten since breakfast, and that had been only a piece of hard bread. Her stomach was tight with nerves, but she was hungry. "Thank you." Nathan carried her bag to the bedroom door and set it just inside. "You can have the bedroom," he said. "I will sleep out here." Sarah stared at him. "That is your bed, and you are my guest." Nathan's tone was firm but kind. "Until you are ready for things to be otherwise, you will have your privacy. But we are to be married. We will be. But there is no rush." Nathan moved to the kitchen, giving her space. "The Reverend can come out next week if you would like, or we can wait longer, whatever makes you comfortable." Sarah did not know what to say. She had expected to be married immediately, to have her wifely duties demanded of her whether she was ready or not. This patience, this consideration, was so far outside her experience that she did not know how to respond. Nathan seemed to sense her confusion. He busied himself in the kitchen, slicing bread and cheese, setting out plates. "Why do you not sit down?" he suggested. "You must be exhausted." Slowly, Sarah moved to the table and sat in one of the chairs. It was sturdy, well-made, comfortable. Nathan brought over the food and poured water from a pitcher into 2 cups. He sat across from her, not next to her, and Sarah felt some of the tension in her shoulders ease. "Tell me about Philadelphia," Nathan said, taking a bite of bread. "I have never been east of San Antonio myself." It was a safe topic, and Sarah grasped at it gratefully. She told him about the streets of the city, the markets, the noise and crowds. She carefully edited out any mention of Marcus, of the boarding house, of the life she was trying to forget. Nathan listened attentively, asking occasional questions that showed genuine interest. As they talked, Sarah found herself relaxing slightly. Nathan's voice was steady and calm, his movements deliberate and unthreatening. He did not drink, she noticed. There was no alcohol in sight anywhere in the house. That was good. That was very good. After they had eaten, Nathan cleared the dishes without being asked. "I usually turn in early," he said. "Ranch work starts before dawn, but you are welcome to stay up as long as you like. There is a lamp on the table if you need light." "I am tired," Sarah admitted. The exhaustion of the journey was catching up with her, making her bones feel heavy. "Then I will bid you good night." Nathan moved to a chest against the wall and pulled out a blanket. "I will be right out here if you need anything. Anything at all." Sarah nodded and retreated to the bedroom, closing the door behind her. The room was simple, with a large bed covered in a quilt, a dresser, and a washstand with a basin and pitcher. There was a window that looked out over the ranch, and the last light of sunset was painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Sarah set her carpetbag on the bed and opened it, pulling out her nightdress. As she changed, she caught sight of herself in the small mirror above the dresser. Her face was thin, drawn with strain, and there were dark circles under her green eyes. Her blonde hair, which had once been her pride, was dull and lifeless. She looked haunted. She climbed into the bed, which was more comfortable than she had expected, and pulled the quilt up to her chin. She could hear Nathan moving around in the main room, the creak of the chair as he settled into it, the soft sound of pages turning. He was reading, she realized, just sitting peacefully reading. Marcus had never read. He had spent his evenings drinking and gambling, coming home late stinking of whiskey and looking for reasons to be angry. Sarah closed her eyes, but sleep did not come easily. Every sound made her tense, waiting for the bedroom door to slam open, for angry footsteps, for shouted accusations. But the house remained quiet except for the occasional turn of a page, and eventually, exhausted beyond measure, Sarah drifted into an uneasy sleep. She woke to screaming and realized it was her own. Strong hands were on her shoulders, shaking her, and she fought back wildly, her fists connecting with solid flesh. "Sarah, Sarah, wake up. You are dreaming." The voice finally penetrated her panic, and Sarah's eyes flew open. Nathan was kneeling beside the bed, his hands raised defensively. There was a red mark on his jaw where she had struck him. Pale dawn light was filtering through the window. "I am sorry," Sarah gasped, pressing her hands to her face. "I am sorry, I did not mean. It is all right, you were having a nightmare." Nathan stood slowly, backing away from the bed. "You were screaming. I was worried." Sarah was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. The nightmare had been so vivid, Marcus looming over her, his fist raised, the smell of whiskey on his breath. "Can I get you some water?" Nathan asked. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. Nathan left the room, and she heard him moving around in the kitchen. He returned with a cup of water, which he set on the bedside table before retreating to the doorway. "Thank you," Sarah managed, reaching for the cup with trembling hands. "You want to talk about it?" Nathan's voice was gentle. "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "No, I just want to forget." Nathan nodded. "I understand. I will leave you be. I have to go out and see to the stock, but I will be back for breakfast in about an hour. There is coffee on the stove if you want some." He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Sarah sat in the bed, sipping the water, trying to calm her racing heart. Through the window, she could see Nathan walking toward the barn, his stride easy and unhurried. He did not look angry that she had hit him, did not seem inclined to retaliate. But Marcus had been charming at first too, she reminded herself. It took time for the mask to slip. Sarah forced herself out of bed and dressed in one of her simple day dresses. She washed her face in the basin, tied her hair back, and ventured out into the main room. The blanket Nathan had used was neatly folded on the chair, and there was indeed coffee on the stove, hot and fresh. She poured herself a cup and stood by the window, watching the ranch come to life in the early morning light. She could see Nathan in the corral with the horses, checking their hooves, running his hands over them with practiced care. He was gentle with the animals, she noticed. His movements were confident but never rough. Sarah found herself moving to the kitchen, looking through the provisions. She could make breakfast, she decided. It would give her something to do, a way to be useful. She found eggs, flour, lard. There was a side of bacon hanging in the cool pantry. She could work with this. By the time Nathan returned to the house, Sarah had biscuits in the oven and bacon sizzling in a pan. He stopped in the doorway, surprise clear on his face. "You did not have to do that," he said. "I wanted to." Sarah kept her eyes on the bacon. "You have been very kind. I should contribute." Nathan washed his hands at the kitchen pump and sat at the table. "It smells wonderful. I confess my cooking is pretty basic." They ate breakfast in a more comfortable silence than the night before. The food was good, and Sarah felt a small spark of pride when Nathan complimented the biscuits. It was such a small thing, but Marcus had never thanked her for anything, had only criticized and complained. After breakfast, Nathan stood and collected his hat. "I have work to do on the south fence today. Some of the posts need replacing. I will probably be gone most of the day." He hesitated. "You are welcome to come along if you would like to see the ranch, or you can stay here, rest, settle in, whatever you prefer." The thought of being alone was both appealing and terrifying. "I will come," Sarah heard herself say. Nathan's face brightened. "I will saddle a horse for you." "Do you ride?" "I used to. It has been a while." "I have a gentle mare that will suit you fine." 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself on horseback for the first time in years, following Nathan through the ranch. The mare was indeed gentle, responsive to the lightest touch. Nathan rode beside her on a sturdy gelding, pointing out landmarks and explaining the workings of the ranch. "I have about 200 head of cattle right now," he said, "hoping to build that up over the next few years. The market in San Antonio is good, and the trail drives north are profitable if you can get your herd there in good condition." Sarah listened, watching the way he sat his horse, the way he surveyed his land with quiet pride. This was a man who had built something from nothing, who worked hard and took satisfaction in honest labor. They spent the morning riding the fence line, with Nathan stopping periodically to replace posts or tighten wire. Sarah helped where she could, holding tools, steadying posts. It felt good to be useful, to be doing something productive. The sun was hot on her back, and she was grateful for the bonnet that shielded her face. At midday, they stopped under the shade of a massive oak tree near a creek. Nathan pulled bread and cheese from his saddlebags, along with a canteen of water. "This is my favorite spot on the ranch," he said, settling onto the grass. "The creek runs year-round, even in the dry months. The tree has to be 100 years old at least." Sarah sat down carefully, keeping a respectful distance. She took the food he offered and ate slowly, savoring the cool shade and the sound of the water flowing over rocks. "Can I ask you something?" Nathan said after a while. Sarah tensed. "What?" "Your letters were very brief. You told me about growing up in Philadelphia, about losing your parents to fever. But there was a lot you did not say." He paused. "I am not trying to pry. I just want to understand. You are so afraid, Sarah. I can see it in your eyes, and I want to know what I can do to help you feel safe." Sarah stared at the creek, tears burning in her eyes. She had not meant to tell him, had planned to carry her secrets to the grave. But something about the way he asked, the genuine concern in his voice, broke through her defenses. "I was married before," she said quietly. "His name was Marcus. We married when I was 19. He seemed kind at first, attentive, but after the wedding he changed." She wrapped her arms around herself. "He drank, and when he drank he became violent." Nathan said nothing, but she could feel the intensity of his attention. "It went on for 3 years. I tried to leave once, but he found me and dragged me back. It only made things worse." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper now. "Then one night he came home drunk as usual. He fell down the stairs and broke his neck. The police questioned me, thought maybe I had pushed him, but I had not. I was in our room hiding. He fell because he was too drunk to walk straight." "My God," Nathan breathed. "I left the next day. I had nowhere to go, no money. I saw the advertisement for the matrimonial agency and I took a chance. I thought anything had to be better than staying in Philadelphia, where everyone looked at me like I was a murderer." She finally looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "I am sorry. I should have told you before. You have every right to send me back." Nathan's face was a mix of anger and compassion, but the anger was clearly not directed at her. "Send you back? Sarah, no. Absolutely not." He moved closer, slowly enough that she could pull away if she wanted to. When she did not, he reached out and took her hand gently in his. I am so sorry that happened to you. No woman should ever have to endure that. No person should. You are not angry that I did not tell you. You had every reason not to trust me, not to trust any man. I am honored that you told me now." His grip on her hand was warm, solid, comforting. "And I want you to know that I will never, ever raise a hand to you. I do not drink, I do not gamble, and I do not believe in solving problems with violence. I am not him, Sarah. I will spend every day proving that to you if I have to." Sarah sobbed once, a sound torn from deep in her chest. Nathan pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Sarah felt safe. She cried into his shoulder, releasing years of fear and pain and grief, and he simply held her, one hand stroking her back in a soothing rhythm. When the storm finally passed, Sarah pulled back, embarrassed by her outburst. "I am sorry. I did not mean to fall apart like that. Do not apologize. You have been carrying that alone for too long." Nathan handed her his handkerchief and she wiped her eyes. "Thank you for trusting me with it." They sat together under the oak tree for a long while after that, not talking, just being present with each other. Sarah felt lighter somehow, as if the telling had released some of the poison that had been festering inside her. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah began to settle into life on the ranch. Nathan was endlessly patient, never pushing her, always giving her space when she needed it. They worked together during the days, tending the stock, mending fences, doing the 100 small tasks that kept a ranch running. In the evenings, they would eat dinner together, and then Nathan would read aloud, his voice a comforting rumble in the growing darkness. Mrs. Garcia, the woman who came to help with the heavy work, arrived the week after Sarah's arrival. She was a woman in her 50s with warm brown eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She took one look at Sarah and seemed to understand everything without being told. "You need feeding up," she declared. "Too skinny. I bring you some of my tamales next time, yes." Sarah found herself smiling, a real smile that felt strange on her face. "I would like that." Mrs. Garcia proved to be not just a help with the housework, but a friend, someone Sarah could talk to about the small concerns of daily life. She taught Sarah how to make tortillas, how to preserve vegetables for the winter, how to manage the particular challenges of keeping house in the Texas Hill Country. "Nathan is a good man," Mrs. Garcia said one day as they worked together in the kitchen. "I have known him since he came here. He works hard, he is honest, he treats people with respect. You are lucky." "I know," Sarah said softly, and she was beginning to believe it. The Reverend came out to the ranch on a Sunday morning in July. Sarah had agreed to the marriage, no longer feeling the desperate need to postpone it. Nathan had proven himself 100 times over, and she found herself wanting to make their arrangement official, to commit herself to this new life. The ceremony was simple, held in the main room of the ranch house with Mrs. Garcia and her husband as witnesses. Sarah wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. Garcia had helped her alter, and Nathan wore his best clothes, which were still just clean work wear. But when he looked at her and said his vows, his eyes were full of such sincerity that Sarah felt her heart swell. When it came time for the kiss, Nathan leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. His lips brushed hers gently, sweetly, and Sarah felt warmth bloom in her chest. This was nothing like Marcus's demanding, punishing kisses. This was a promise, a beginning. That night, Sarah did not retreat to the bedroom alone. She and Nathan went together, and though she was nervous, she was not afraid. Nathan was gentle and patient, letting her set the pace, stopping whenever she showed the slightest sign of distress. He made love to her as if she were precious, something to be cherished, and Sarah wept again, but this time from joy. "I love you," Nathan whispered against her hair as they lay tangled together afterward. "I know it is too soon and you do not have to say it back, but I wanted you to know." Sarah turned in his arms to look at him. In the moonlight filtering through the window, his face was open, vulnerable. "I think I am falling in love with you too," she admitted. "It scares me, but it is a good kind of scared." Nathan smiled and kissed her forehead. "We will take it one day at a time." The summer passed in a rhythm of work and growing closeness. Sarah learned the ways of the ranch, became skilled at riding, at roping, at reading the signs of weather and livestock. She found she had a gift with the horses, and Nathan started letting her help with the training of the younger ones. She also began to heal. The nightmares grew less frequent, and she no longer flinched every time Nathan moved quickly or raised his voice to call the dogs. She learned to trust his touch, to welcome it, to seek it out. The physical intimacy between them deepened, became something beautiful and connecting. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch that Nathan had built that summer, watching the sun set over the hills. They would talk about their days, make plans for the future, dream together about expanding the ranch, maybe starting a horse breeding program. "I have been thinking," Nathan said one evening in late September. "There is a plot of land adjacent to ours, about 200 acres. The owner is looking to sell. If we could buy it, we could run more cattle or start that horse operation you have been talking about." "Can we afford it?" Sarah asked practically. She had learned to manage the ranch accounts over the summer, had a good head for numbers. "If we have a good trail drive this fall, yes. It would be tight, but I think we could make it work." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then let us do it. Let us keep building this dream." The trail drive that October was Sarah's first. Nathan tried to convince her to stay behind, but she insisted on coming. She had become a skilled enough rider and roper to pull her weight, and she wanted to be part of this, to contribute to their shared future. The drive to San Antonio took 2 weeks, moving the cattle slowly to keep them in good condition. Sarah rode alongside the other hands Nathan had hired for the drive, earning their respect with her hard work and steady hand. At night, she would curl up beside Nathan under the stars, exhausted but happy. The cattle sold well at the market in San Antonio, better than they had hoped. Nathan returned to Bandera with enough money to buy the adjacent land and still have a comfortable cushion for the winter. On the way back, he surprised Sarah by taking her into a general store and buying her a new dress, a deep green that matched her eyes. "You have been wearing the same 3 dresses since you arrived," he said when she protested. "Let me buy you something nice." Sarah accepted the gift with tears in her eyes. It was such a small thing, but it represented so much. Marcus had never bought her anything, had begrudged her every penny spent on necessities. Nathan's generosity, his desire to give her things simply because they would make her happy, still had the power to move her. Winter came to the hill country, such as it was. The temperatures dropped, but snow was rare. Sarah threw herself into preparing the house for the colder months, putting up preserves, making quilts, ensuring they had ample firewood. Nathan worked on improving the outbuildings, making sure the stock would be comfortable through the winter. On Christmas morning, Nathan gave Sarah a beautiful leather-bound journal. "I thought you might want to write," he said. "You have such a way with words in your letters. It seems a shame not to put it to use." Sarah opened the journal, running her fingers over the smooth cream-colored pages. "It is beautiful. Thank you." She gave him a shirt she had spent weeks making, carefully stitching it from fabric Mrs. Garcia had helped her pick out. It fit him perfectly, and the look of pleasure on his face was all the thanks she needed. They spent the day quietly, just the 2 of them, cooking a special meal and exchanging stories about Christmases past. Sarah told him about her childhood, before her parents had died, when the holidays had been full of warmth and love. Nathan told her about growing up on a small farm in Georgia, about heading west after his parents had passed, looking for a fresh start. "I am glad your fresh start led you here," Sarah said, snuggled against him in front of the fire. "So am I," Nathan replied, kissing the top of her head. The new year brought new challenges and new growth. The land purchase went through, and they spent the early months of 1877 exploring their expanded property, making plans for how to use it. Sarah's idea for a horse breeding program began to take shape, and Nathan supported it wholeheartedly. In March, Sarah realized she had missed her monthly courses. At first she thought it was just the stress of the hard work, but when it happened again in April, she allowed herself to hope. Mrs. Garcia confirmed her suspicions with a knowing smile. "You are with child," she said. "I can tell. You have that glow." Sarah's emotions were complicated. She was happy, excited about the prospect of a baby. But she was also terrified. What if she was not a good mother? What if the baby inherited something from Marcus, some darkness that would manifest later? Nathan was overjoyed when she told him, sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around despite her protests. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to be parents." "Are you not worried?" Sarah asked later that night as they lay in bed. "What if something goes wrong?" "We will face it together," Nathan said firmly. "Whatever comes, we will handle it. You are strong, Sarah, stronger than you know, and I will be right here beside you every step of the way." As her belly swelled with the growing child, Sarah found some of her fears easing. Nathan was attentive but not smothering, helping her with the tasks that became difficult as her pregnancy progressed, but never treating her like she was fragile. Mrs. Garcia made sure she was eating properly and getting enough rest, fussing over her with maternal care. The baby came in late November, a long, difficult labor that had Nathan pacing the main room while Mrs. Garcia and the midwife she had brought attended to Sarah. When the baby's first cry finally filled the air, Nathan burst into the room, his face wild with worry. "A boy," Mrs. Garcia announced with satisfaction. "A big, healthy boy." Nathan moved to the bedside, looking down at Sarah with such love that it made her chest ache. "You did it," he whispered. "You were so brave." Sarah held their son, marveling at his tiny, perfect features, his shock of dark hair. "He looks like you," she said. "He has your nose," Nathan countered. He reached out tentatively, and Sarah placed the baby in his arms. Nathan held his son with careful reverence, tears streaming down his face. "Hello, little one. I am your papa." They named him James Nathan Everett, and he was the light of their lives. Sarah proved to be a natural mother, patient and loving, and any fears she had harbored about her ability to parent vanished in the face of her fierce love for her child. Nathan was an involved father, taking James with him on the ranch as soon as the boy was old enough, teaching him about the land and the animals with infinite patience. The years flowed by like the creek that ran through their property, steady and sure. The ranch prospered under their careful management. The horse breeding program Sarah had started became known throughout the region for producing excellent stock. They added onto the house, building a proper bedroom for James and later for his sister Emma, who arrived 2 years after him. Sarah's nightmares about Marcus faded to almost nothing, surfacing only occasionally in times of stress. When they did, Nathan would hold her until she calmed, whispering reassurances, reminding her that she was safe, that she was loved. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Sarah back to the oak tree by the creek where she had first told him about her past. "I wanted to come back here," he said, "to the place where you first trusted me with your pain. Because I want you to know that these have been the best 10 years of my life. You took a chance on me, on us, and you gave me everything I ever wanted. A partner, a family, a real home. Sarah looked at the man she loved, seeing the silver starting to thread through his dark hair, the deeper lines around his eyes from years of sun and laughter. "You saved me," she said simply. "When I got off that stagecoach, I was broken. I was so full of fear that I could barely function. But you were patient with me. You gave me space to heal, time to learn to trust again. You replaced my fear with hope, and then you replaced hope with love." Nathan pulled her into his arms, and they stood together under the ancient oak, the sounds of the ranch drifting to them on the breeze. They could hear James calling to his sister, their voices bright with childish joy. They could hear the horses in the corral, the cattle lowing in the distance. "This is what I dreamed of," Nathan said. "When I was alone out here, this is exactly what I dreamed of. But the reality is so much better than anything I could have imagined." Sarah tilted her face up for his kiss, still feeling that flutter in her chest that his touch always brought. "Take me home," she said. "You are my home," Nathan replied. "Wherever you are, that is where I belong." They walked back to the house hand in hand, their children running to greet them. James, now 10 years old and already showing signs of becoming as tall as his father, grabbed Nathan's other hand. "Papa, can we go riding after supper? I want to show you how Daisy is responding to the new training." "Of course, son." Nathan looked down at his boy with pride. "Your mother taught you well. You have her gift with horses." Emma, 8 years old with her mother's blonde hair and her father's brown eyes, tugged on Sarah's skirt. "Mama, Mrs. Garcia showed me how to make the bread today. Can I try by myself tomorrow?" "We can do it together," Sarah said, smoothing her daughter's hair. "I will guide you, but you can do most of the work yourself." That evening, after supper, Sarah stood on the porch watching her family. Nathan and James were in the corral with one of the young horses, working together with easy synchronicity. Emma was beside her, chattering about her day, about the baby chicks that had just hatched, about the wildflowers she wanted to pick tomorrow. Sarah thought about the frightened woman who had arrived in Bandera all those years ago, so broken and afraid that she could barely speak. That woman seemed like a stranger now, someone from another life entirely. The years with Nathan had transformed her, had given her the space and safety to become who she was always meant to be. She was a rancher's wife, a mother, a horsewoman, a businesswoman. She was strong and capable and loved. She had built a life here in the Texas Hill Country that she never could have imagined in those dark days in Philadelphia. The fear that had defined her for so long was gone, replaced first with hope, and then with a deep, abiding joy. She had found her place, her purpose, her person. She had found home. As the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold, Nathan looked up from the corral and caught her eye. He smiled, that warm, genuine smile that still had the power to make her heart skip, and Sarah smiled back. No words were needed. They understood each other perfectly. Two souls that had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful. The years continued to unfold with the comfortable rhythm of a life well lived. James grew into a young man who combined his father's steady nature with his mother's intuition with animals. He took over more and more of the ranch work, freeing Nathan to focus on the business side of things and on mentoring other young ranchers in the area. Emma proved to have inherited her mother's head for numbers and her father's work ethic. She helped Sarah manage the horse breeding program, keeping meticulous records and developing a system for tracking bloodlines that made their operation even more successful. In 1889, when Sarah was 40 years old, she discovered to her surprise that she was pregnant again. She had thought her childbearing years were behind her, but life apparently had other plans. Nathan was delighted, if concerned about her health at her age. "Are you sure you are all right with this?" he asked, his hand on her belly. "I am nervous," Sarah admitted, "but I am also happy. One more blessing to add to all the others." Their third child, a daughter they named Rose, was born in the spring of 1890. Despite Sarah's worries, the pregnancy and birth went smoothly, and Rose entered the world healthy and squalling. James and Emma were enchanted with their baby sister, taking turns helping care for her. As the 19th century drew to a close, the Everett Ranch was one of the most successful operations in the area. They had expanded their holdings to over 1,000 acres, ran a substantial cattle operation, and had a horse breeding program that was sought after throughout Texas and beyond. But for Sarah and Nathan, the true measure of their success was not in land or livestock or money. It was in the family they had built, the love they shared, the life they had created together. On a warm evening in June of 1895, Sarah and Nathan sat on their porch, watching the sunset as they had done thousands of times before. James, now 27, was married and running his own section of the ranch. Emma, 25, was engaged to a fine young rancher from a neighboring spread. Rose, 5 years old, was playing in the yard with the ranch dogs. "You ever think about that day you arrived?" Nathan asked, taking Sarah's hand. "How scared you were." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Sometimes, but it seems like a lifetime ago, like it happened to someone else." "In a way it did," Nathan said. "That woman does not exist anymore. She became you, the strong, beautiful woman sitting beside me." "You gave me that," Sarah said. "You gave me the space to heal, the safety to become who I was meant to be." "We gave it to each other," Nathan corrected. "You think I was not changed by you. You made me better, Sarah. You made me whole." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the desperate, frightened woman on the stagecoach to the confident, capable rancher she had become, it had been a transformation she never could have imagined. The fear that had once dominated her life was gone, worn away by years of steady love and patient kindness. In its place was hope, joy, contentment, and a deep abiding love for the man beside her and the life they had built together. Nathan had kept every promise he made that day by the creek. He had never raised a hand to her in anger, never given her cause to fear him. Instead, he had loved her with a steadiness that had allowed her to blossom, to become more than she had ever thought possible. As Sarah sat there on the porch, surrounded by the evidence of their shared life, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had been given a second chance, an opportunity to escape the darkness of her past and build a future filled with light. And she had seized that chance with both hands, had fought for it, had worked for it, had earned it. The ranch that spread out before them was a testament to what two people could build when they worked together, when they supported each other, when they loved each other with everything they had. It was more than land and livestock. It was a legacy, something they would pass down to their children and their children's children. Nathan stood and pulled Sarah to her feet, wrapping his arms around her. She leaned into his embrace, still feeling that same sense of safety and belonging that had gradually replaced her fear all those years ago. "I love you," Nathan murmured against her hair. "More today than yesterday, less than I will tomorrow." "And I love you," Sarah replied. "My partner, my friend, my heart." They stood together as the night deepened around them, two souls intertwined, two lives merged into one beautiful whole. The mail-order bride who had arrived with fear in her eyes had found everything she never knew she needed in the steady cowboy who had met her with patience, kindness, and an open heart. He had replaced her fear with hope, and then he had given her something even better. He had given her love, a family, a home, a future. He had given her the greatest gift of all, the freedom to be herself, fully and completely, without fear or reservation. and in giving her that freedom, he had found his own. Together, they had built not just a ranch, but a legacy of love that would endure for generations. The Everett name would become synonymous with integrity, hard work, and family values throughout the Texas Hill Country. Their children would grow up secure in the knowledge that they were loved, that they could achieve anything they set their minds to. That family was the most important thing in the world. They would carry forward the lessons their parents had taught them, both through words and through the example of their lives. As Sarah and Nathan finally went inside for the night, their hands still clasped together, they carried with them the satisfaction of a day well lived and the anticipation of many more to come. The ranch would continue to grow and prosper under their stewardship. Their children would flourish and have families of their own. And through it all, the love between Sarah and Nathan would remain constant, a beacon of hope and a testament to the power of patience, kindness, and unwavering commitment. The story of how Sarah had arrived in Bandera, broken and afraid, and how Nathan had given her the space and safety to heal, would become part of the family lore, told to grandchildren and great-grandchildren as an example of how love could triumph over fear, how hope could replace despair, how two people could find each other and build something lasting and beautiful. But for Sarah and Nathan themselves, it was not a story. It was simply their life, lived one day at a time, built on a foundation of trust and respect and deep abiding love. And as they climbed into bed that night, Sarah curled into Nathan's familiar embrace. She felt the same contentment that had become her constant companion. She was home. She was safe. She was loved. And she had the rest of her life to enjoy the beautiful future she and Nathan had built together. The fear that had once defined her was nothing but a distant memory, replaced entirely by hope, by joy, by love. She had been given a second chance at life, and she had made the most of it. Together with Nathan, she had created something precious and enduring, a love story for the ages, a legacy that would last long after they were gone.